Hello everyone, Hyper here, and welcome to the Assassination Rogue review. Please keep in mind that all of my testing is done on the BFA beta, so all of these abilities are still subject to change whenever the official expansion goes live. That being said, in this video we'll take a look at all of the talents and abilities which were removed, added, or changed in any major way. Assassination Rogue is one of those specs which didn't really see too much change from Legion, because a lot of those legendaries and abilities that we're used to, we still have access to in BFA. However, a few major changes were made, especially to our AoE, to make it a little bit more sustained and also give us some more options when it comes to AoE, because historically Assassination Rogue was always very good at single target damage, but really lacked when it came to AoE and especially now Mythic Plus situations. Let's take a look at all of the talents that were removed. First of all, we have Hemorrhage, which used to increase our bleed damage against the target. Second talent that was removed is Shadow Focus, which reduced our ability cost by 75% if we were in stealth. Then third, just like the other rogue specs, they removed Anticipation, which just increased our combo point cap to 10. In our utility row, they removed Thuggy, which reset our growth whenever a target affected by it died. And the reason they removed this talent is mostly because they changed the cooldown on growth. In the second to last row, they removed Alacrity, which is a talent that gives us haste. And historically, Assassination Rogue always scaled really bad with haste because Mastery was always its major stat, and then usually crit. Then in the last row, they removed Death from Above, and just like I mentioned for the Outlaw Rogue, Death from Above was a talent that was never used in Assassination, so I'm glad to see it gone. Overall, Assassination didn't really see too many changes to baseline abilities. The blind cooldown was reduced from 2 minutes to 1 minute, just like the other rogue specs. One kind of interesting change is that Garrote cooldown was changed from 15 seconds to 6 seconds. And in Legion, this ability, you would always just press it on cooldown pretty much, because the duration and the damage would roll over, because the duration was so close to the cooldown. However, in BFA, with a 6-second cooldown, we actually have a chance to keep this up on multiple targets. Perhaps the biggest change to Assassination Rogue was the change to its Mastery, which now increases our bleed as well as poison damage, where in Legion it only increased our poison damage, so now our growth and our rupture also benefit from our Mastery. The Mutilate cost was changed from 55 energy to 50, so that's just a minor adjustment, and Vendetta was changed to generate 60 energy over 3 seconds, and this is basically a nerfed version of the Urge to Kill artifact trait. Naturally, with the removal of all of these talents, it does open up space for new ones. However, for Assassination Rogue, most of the talents that they added do come from either Legendaries or artifact traits from Legion. So in the first row, we have Blindside. In Legion, Rogue was an execute class if you were wearing the legendary bracers. And in order to kind of preserve this gameplay and playstyle, Blizzard added this talent, which is only usable if the target is below 30% health. And it does some extra damage, and this is basically your builder instead of Mutilate whenever you're in Execute. On top of being an Execute, whenever you use Mutilate, you also have a 30% chance to make this ability usable even if the target is not below 30% health. In Tier 2, Subterfuge was slightly changed, and the damage bonus on Garrote was changed from 125% down to 100%. And also, here we see the addition of a new talent, Master Assassin. This works the same way as the legendary shoulders in Legion, but the crit bonus is 50% instead of 100%. In Tier 3, we see Marked for Death, whose cooldown was changed from 60 seconds to 30 seconds, and this talent also used to be in our last tier, and which was now moved to our 3rd tier. In Tier 4, we saw a small change to Leeching Poison. Previously, you had to choose between a lethal and a non-lethal poison, so you could have 2 on your weapon. However, in BFA, you can have up to 3 poisons if you spec into Leeching. So you can still have your lethal, non-lethal, and Leeching poison on your weapon at the same time. In the Tier 5 row, we saw the addition of Iron Wire, which increases the silence of Garrote, and enemies affected by Garrote deal reduced damage for a short duration. Also in this row, Prey on the Weak was slightly nerfed from 15% to 10%, however, now it lasts for 6 seconds, so you could argue that overall this is not even a nerf. In Tier 6, we saw Venom Rush move to this row, and is now changed to refund energy whenever you use Mutilate. Another slight change in this row is a small nerf to Toxic Blade, whose nature damage increase was changed from 35% to 30%. And the third talent in this row, Exsanguinate, was also changed to cause your targets to bleed out 100% faster, down from 150%. In the last tier, we see the addition of 3 new talents. Poison Bomb you should be familiar with from Legion. It works the same way as the artifact trait. However, the proc chance was increased to 4% per combo point, up from 2.5%. This means that if you spend 5 combo points, you have a 20% chance to proc your Poison Bomb. Hidden Blades increases the damage of your Fan of Knives, and this is a slightly nerfed version of the Legendary Cloak from Legion. The third talent is an AoE combo point spender, which applies the bleed to all of the targets around you. And this is very useful and crucial talent for Assassination Rogue, because the one thing that Assassination Rogue was really lacking in was sustained AoE. Now that you know what the changes are to Assassination Rogue, let's speculate about potential talent builds for single target and AoE. What you see on the screen here is a single target build which I put together, and overall it feels very similar to Legion Assassination Rogue. One of the big choices, however, comes down to Master Poisoner versus Blindside. I feel like fights where you can take advantage of Blindside, for example, fights like Last Boss in Eye of Ashara in Legion, Blindside would be a huge talent, and maybe even on fights where you have an extended execute phase, this can be a huge improvement. However, overall, Master Poisoner will probably net you more damage as it stands right now. For this talent build, I'm using Master Poisoner for just consistent damage, Master Assassin to increase our burst a little bit, and then Vigor to increase our energy regen and kind of smooth it out. Then in the tier 4 row, for raid encounters, you will most likely take Cheat Death, but maybe for leveling or if you want some sustained self-healing, then you can take Leeching Poison. And then for most boss encounters, you won't be able to use Prey on the Weak. However, if there's any ads you can stun, this will greatly benefit your entire group. Then in the second to last row, Toxic Blade currently seems like the best option. However, if you find yourself lacking in energy regen, you can go ahead and take Venom Rush. And then in the last row for single target, it seems like Poison Bomb will be the hands down choice. This build plays very similar to Legion Assassination Rogue, where you open with Garrote, Mutilate and Rupture, then you get your Toxic Blade up, Vendetta, and then you sneak in a quick Vanish and Venom there for the crit bonus. And then you just build with Envenom, spend with, or you build with Mutilate rather, spend with Envenom, and you want to keep up your Garrote and your Rupture on the target. So overall, not very different and feels kind of smooth to play. My one issue with it is still the RNG of combo point generation, because you are essentially generating extra combo points whenever you crit. So whenever you're at 3, you are at risk of overcapping, and then with Toxic Blade, sometimes you generate 1, sometimes you generate 2. So I don't know, overall, it feels a little bit awkward because you are wasting some combo points. But it's not that big of a deal, and one thing that's kind of nice is that our Poison Bomb doesn't do insane damage like it does in Legion, so if you get good RNG versus bad RNG, your damage will not be fluctuating as much as it does currently. The second talent build here is our AoE Sustain build. And here we take elaborate planning because we're generating so many combo points that we can essentially keep this up almost 100% of the time. In the second row, you take Subterfuge for your opener. Especially in Mythic Plus, you're able to re-stealth between packs, and this allows you to just apply Garrote to all of your targets out of your opener. Then in the third row, you still just take Vigor. Fourth row, either Leeching Poison or Cheat Death, probably. Fifth row, Elusiveness. And in the sixth row, you can either take Venom Rush or Toxic Blade. I like the little bit of an extra energy regen with Venom Rush, but if you find yourself needing more focus damage on a single target, then you can take Toxic Blade. And in the last row, obviously, we take Crimson Tempest, which is our bleed that we apply to everything within 10 yards. For burst AoE situations and for example boss encounters where you have ads spawning from time to time and they don't last very long, you can run Hidden Blades. However, for sustained AoE situation, Crimson Tempest does outscale it and overall performs better. This build does take some micromanagement to keep up a decent amount of damage, because essentially you want to keep Garrote on 4 targets, Rupture on 4 targets, and then Crimson Tempest on all of your targets. And in between, you just Fan of Knives to generate combo points, and you spend any extra combo points on Envenom. So out of your opener, since we're running Subterfuge, you'll be able to get your Garrote on 4 targets. So we start on 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. And then here we're just able to Crimson Tempest, and then we're just going to go ahead and apply Rupture to all of these targets. And once you have it up on all of them, you're basically going to start reapplying your Garrote, starting with the first target. So it's a lot of things to manage and juggle, but it does yield quite a bit of AoE damage. And especially in sustained AoE situations, you're going to get a lot of damage out of this if you do it properly. Now, going with the Fan of Knives build is perhaps a little bit more simple, and it does give you better burst damage, but on sustained damage, it doesn't really come close to how much you're able to pump out with Crimson Tempest. Now for my overall thoughts about Assassination Rogue. It didn't change too much going from Legion into BFA, because most of the changes came in form of incorporating either Legendaries or Artifact abilities and Artifact traits into our spec. So even though it seems like we're getting a bunch of new talents, most of them are just a nerfed form of the ones in Legion. This spec still has a few issues with it, mainly combo point generation, which comes from RNG based on your crit strikes. So if you're critting a lot, you're generating more combo points, and then if you're not getting lucky crits, you're generating less. So that's a little bit awkward. And then another thing is obviously Poison Bomb. And even though it's a 20% chance now to proc it whenever you spend 5 combo points, it's still a chance. And that's a huge thing that Assassination Rogue struggles with in Legion, is that your damage swing from your good pulls to your bad pulls is a huge number. And with Poison Bomb being kind of scaled back, it's not that big of a deal, but the combo point generation is still an issue. Another thing which some people might find a little bit worrying is the amount of things you have to juggle if you want to do good AoE damage. It feels a little similar to Shadow Priest, where you have to manage dots on a lot of targets to be able to pump out enough damage. So you have 3 dots which you have to manage. You have to build combo points, spend combo points, and also you have your duration on your Garrote, so you can't just refresh that whenever you want. So I don't know, it feels a little bit weird to play, and perhaps if you didn't take Crimson Tempest and you just went with the Fan of Knives build, it would be a little bit easier, but overall that's a lot less damage as it stands right now. Now for the pros of the spec. Assassination Rogue still feels fairly simple to play on single target, and even though we still have that RNG component, with the addition of our bleeds to our mastery, they now feel like an actual damaging tool rather than just an avenue to increase our energy regeneration, so that's a very nice change. Also, Assassination Rogue was not really affected by the GCD change going into BFA, because our only really damaging cooldown is Vendetta, and even though it's on the global cooldown, it's only one ability we need to press. Vanish is still off the GCD, so it doesn't affect our Vanish and Venom combo, it doesn't make it feel awkward. And rogues are, still rogues in raiding, so we have Feint and we have Cloak, so those are basically always useful tools. We have decent mobility with Sprint and with Shadow Step, so that's not changed from Legion. And if you played this spec in Legion, it will feel very, very familiar to play it in BFA. Our AoE was slightly increased and remedied via the Crimson Tempest and the new Fan of Knives talent, but it does feel like you have to put a lot of focus into actually doing good AoE damage. Overall, I like the direction they're going with the Assassination Rogue, with it having good opening damage and good execute damage, and then in between they kind of do decent sustain damage. So as far as leveling and soloing, Assassination Rogue is probably not something I would turn to, because obviously with any kind of dot-based classes, you have to build up your dots and then sustain them. So you have to apply Rupture, you have to apply Garrote, and then you have to sustain it on the target. And when you have to apply Rupture and Garrote to every single target that you attack, it becomes kind of annoying. Because on the other hand, you have Outlaw Rogue, where as long as you keep up Slice and Dice on yourself, you can just switch targets however you want and do damage to them. So for leveling, I wouldn't really recommend Assassination Rogue, but for raiding, it will probably be a very strong spec. Thank you for watching, and if you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button and sub to the channel. And I'm also curious to hear what your thoughts are on the assassination changes, especially if you played this class in Legion and had a chance to try it out in BFA. What do you think about it? Do you think Blizzard made the right choice with implementing our legendaries and our artifact abilities into talents rather than coming up with new stuff, which we saw in most other specs in the game? Again, thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.